Okay.
Oh,
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Just, hauled up, quarantined for the most part, and trying to do work from home as much as I can.
Yeah, same. Try not to fail school by not waking up too early.
Oh man, I couldn't even imagine what school must be like right now with to people. It's
Horrible.
Do you have Moodle, like one of those like systems that let you like do forum posts and upload essays and stuff?
No, it's just like Canvas and like Blackboard, just like the old stuff that isn't working too well. But the professors like refuse to think of better ideas.
Well, hopefully they learn by the end of this. But who knows?
Hopefully.
You can't trust you can't trust professors
Yeah.
sometimes. Well, blah blah blah. Other than school, what's been quarantine life like?
It's been I guess just trying to adjust and kind of like take care of the people around me because my sister has three children. So it's trying to keep them busy, keep yourself busy, and just not lose your sanity, I guess.
I get you. Yeah, it's been
Yeah.
similar for me here. I brought a bunch of stuff from the studio a couple weeks ago, and outside of like the work, anytime
Yeah.
I get to spend being creative, I try.
Yeah. Me too.
But
I think
yeah,
it's hard though, like being super creative and being on top of everything when you feel like you're still at home and you're relaxing.
yes, there's that too.
Yeah.
There's like the routines have like fallen out. You know,
Yeah.
I'm much. Is it bad to say like I feel much lazier these days than I did about a month ago?
Oh yeah, for sure, 100%. My sleep schedule is gone. Gone.
Out the I
Yeah.
completely agree. Um,
Yeah.
what's been has it affected your art making process?
I think it's affected a little bit just because I only have like a couple canvases left on me, and Michael's is obviously closed and all those other stores. And I don't want to order from Amazon because I feel bad making people work
Right.
just for a canvas. So I think it's like balancing the guilt of forcing people to work so that you can paint and not having materials.
That's a good point. I hadn't even thought of that. I like low key have a I mean, the nice word for it would be stockpile, but the reality is more like I hoard stuff. I hoard
Yeah,
stuff
I
in the
wish I
studio.
did.
But
Yeah.
Doodaloo, what inspires the work you make mainly? Because for people who don't know, it's a little. I mean, I guess the process is a little wild. The results usually are really beautiful and evocative works on canvas, but the for those who don't know, uh, can you tell us a little bit about your work process and what inspires it?
So when I first started making art, probably like 3 years back, because I never really got into this field willingly, it kind of just happened for me.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, I didn't have materials, and so I just wanted to like experiment with what was in my garage already, which is a lot of like toxic things and like bleach. And I had cement, I had like grout and all that stuff. And then it kind of morphed into the idea of because I'm Palestinian and over there art is like really hard to make because of the occupation and you're probably going to jail for it and all that stuff. And back when there was like war going on between the Palestinians or between the occupation and us just trying to survive, even colors and like spray paint were illegal, like especially the colors of the flag. So I think that's where like a lot of like my early work is only like one specific color, just to kind of like show like I have like this one spray can and I'm gonna use it as if I was there and I only had this one spray can or this one bucket of paint, which I did because I don't have that much, like just random materials laying around or like good materials. So it just kind of turned into like that and just trying to make things look nice at the end of the day and kind of work in like a cohesive way when probably these materials shouldn't be.
That's a good point. The kind of like like what is it? Like when you're like the two siblings are fighting and the mom puts them in the like the friendship T-shirt or whatever. You know, like
Yeah,
making you be friends is the work
yeah,
process. It's like I
yeah.
relate to that because a lot of the times when I'm collaging, especially, I'm not really using glue. Like I'm technically collaging paper to paper, but using like just paint. So
Hmm.
it's you're kind of fighting with the material. Whereas if you were using like the whatever proper like glue or adhesive, you wouldn't have to fight with the paper at all. But like no, you're like making them be friends. Surface to art. Um, yeah, I guess
Yeah.
you told. I have a question here about your material choices, but it's I guess you told us about that, and it's interesting. Was when you kind of used up all the grout and cement you had at first, what were some of the things you went to next?
One thing that I recently discovered was I don't even know what the real word for it is, but the snow for the I mean the salt for the snow that you put outside.
Mm-hmm.
And so like when it mixes with something cold or something hot, it like becomes hot to like melt the snow. And so I was experimenting with that and it was beautiful, but then after like 20 minutes, it all just turned into water and it was really bad. So now I'm kind of trying to figure out how to make that work without it turning into like slime and disgusting. And there's still a lot of bleach in my house, so still a lot of bleach. And yeah, I've been using a lot of salt. I feel like my last like four pieces have had like just normal salt in it. I like the way it reacts with like paint. It turns into like this weird like crystally gritty thing. It's nice.
It's interesting talking about the like the snow salt because there's like chemical reactions happening on top of your canvas surface, and if like it's crazy because I think in if it weren't for the fact that we're living in a modern time, you couldn't even like record your canvas looking beautiful. You know, um,
Yeah.
it'd be this this kind of like you'd only have the final to convince somebody that it started out really beautiful when the final
Hmm.
result is like weird and slimy. Um, what's been what have like along the way do you like keep a record of like what each thing does as you go along, or are you sort of like pressing the reset button each time when you go to make art?
I guess it's a little bit of both. Like the materials that I've used more than once, I have like a mental note of it. But I was never one to like write down anything or sketch out things. A, because I suck at drawing, and B, because I'm just super unorganized and I like messes, as you can tell. So I
I
was
think your
extremely
walls are
not
beautiful.
organized. There's just a lot of stuff going on. And that's kind of like how I like things to be, like an unorganized, organized mess. But then the things that I know don't work, I do have a mental, like, obviously, like I write it down like in my head, but I tried to like reset every time. I tried to just see if like maybe it'll just be different this time because my garage slash studio is not as cold or not as hot or it's more humid today or something. Those matter too, and they really like change up different canvases. I've noticed.
Absolutely. What's I'm gonna ask you eventually about like your favorite experiments you've made, but I guess in line with all this, can you tell us about some of the like some of the failures if you can consider any of them failures?
But yeah, no, for sure. I've had a lot of failures. A lot of there's been like a couple pieces that were beautiful the second I finished them, and then just the next day they dry horribly. Like that's happened to me more than like five times at least. The slush one with the salt for the snow, that one was destroyed. But I loved it so much. And then all the ones that I've used, because I use a lot of alginate too, which kind of is like for molding.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, like in the winter, because I don't really have anywhere else to put my canvases other than the garage. In the winter, they'll like freeze over and crack off just
Gotcha.
completely. Yeah, so that like always hurts. But I usually like if something gets destroyed like that, I'll always scrape it off or as best as I can and then reuse the canvas. Like I've never thrown out a piece without trying to remake it or trying to just like shave everything off and do it again. Yeah. But it's happened many, many times.
Where do they go? Like, where do they find their homes usually?
All of them, all my art.
Sure.
Um, a lot of them I sell to just like people that I know that will take care of them because if I ever want them back, I know I could ask. Because like if one piece is great and I sell it to somebody for a while, but then let's say I submit it to like a gallery and something like that, then I could like ask for it back. But there have been a lot of times where I'll just make canvases for specific people, and then a lot of them I'm just like keeping to try to put them either into like my own show that could maybe one day happen, or something like that.
Nice. Um, and what have been some of the what you would call like the success children, like the ones you start out happy with and you stay happy with?
Yeah, I've had a couple of those. There's one in my one of my early pieces. There was a pink one that I used like a lot of cement. That one still like to this day it looks just as good as it did like the day of that I made it. And I have it in my like salon basically like my dining area because my mom really really likes it. That's like my favorite one. And then there's one in my sister's house that's like really big that also turned out really well, and I still have a lot of them that turned out really well. That I do have like I have a lot in my brother's house because he lives by himself and I could store them there without
Hmm.
him being like too angry about it. So the really really good ones I force him to like babysit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really interesting when you were talking about the alginate specifically, um, the salt and the alginate. These kind of like temperature reliant, time reliant works of art. It's a in the art world generally, people are looking for stability. They're like all they're after is something that they can pay a lot of money for now, but then in a few years, if they want to flip it, they could flip it because it'll look the same. But there is, I think, tons of room for art that kind of like continues over time to meld and evolve because of the material. Is that something that kind of, as a result of working with all these materials, is it like in your wheelhouse of interest?
I think so. I think I always get bored of things like really easily. And I like whenever like I go back into the garage and I see something like looks different. Like I wouldn't mind that happening in my house. And I feel like a lot of people are like yeah, people do crave like stability and things that are not changing because the world is changing so horribly that they need something to like stay constant. But sometimes it's nice to just like throw something out after like 2 years of having it. Like I never like I have a lot of things that I hoard, but I always like throwing everything out like once the year ends, or just erasing everything on my laptop for the fun of it, and just kind of starting over completely. Because we never stay the same. As much as we pretend that we do, like we don't. Like circumstances in life will always destroy you and then build you back up.
That's a little nutty, but I can like totally understand the feeling behind it. This kind of the the reset button, right? To like just the clean slate. Clean slates are like actually really powerful because you'll like say an accident happens, and this has happened a couple times to people I know. Like your workspace floods, and you like lose a bunch of art you'd been storing for a while. It almost inevitably, like, the feeling that comes after that, like pang of, oh, I lost this, is sort of like, well, now that I threw this stuff out, I have more room and I can make new things to put there, or I can make new work, or inevitably the feeling that comes after like this, even if it's hard to get rid of something, now you have room for more. So I think it's
Yeah.
actually like a beneficial, powerful thing to do once in a while.
Yeah, I think it's like a little bit like depressing almost because like the less you hold on to something, the less risk it has of like getting destroyed. And I think that's why like I don't care if like my art gets destroyed after like a week of having it. Like it's fine. Like you can always make something new. It's like I feel so bad people that work on like let's say like a drawing for like 12 hours straight and then something just like really small happens to it. I couldn't imagine like dealing with that. So I just make everything like haphazard and like it hits my standards, but it's not as crippling.
If something does go wrong and you like end up losing that, it's not as crippling.
Yeah.
Do you you mentioned early on about the way you were working with kind of um was a callback to the like conditions of making art in Palestine. What do you was this 3 years ago? Is it still something that inspires you now or that informs the art you're making now?
I think yeah, like I was born there, so my first life was there, and living under like complete military occupation, and not being able to like leave my tiny village for long periods of time, and all that. So I didn't even have like the opportunity to make art or think about it until like, well, my family was already here, but I stayed there for a while, and then when we came here, um, like obviously like there's opportunity and stuff, and it's almost like a shame of not holding on to that forever.
Yeah.
Like I think I'll always carry like that sense of like where I come from and how much like that means to me, how much that shaped who I am into all my work. Like no matter what it is, it'll always like carry that underlayer of I am like Palestinian and it really means a lot to me. And the occupation needs to end and people need to stop supporting it.
The
So,
the kinds of the kind of socio-political things that inform you when you think about and the kinds of materials you're using. Are there other things that you notice in your sort of surrounding life that influence your thought process or the art you're making?
yeah, I think like for example, I made one piece like dedicated to a martyr who was like 18 at the time, and like I think I was like 19, and so I just like I got like a hammer and I just made like holes to like look like bullet holes, but it's like I guess like that was one of the pieces that my mom like understood as like a complete immigrant and like she's still extremely connected to like the language and everything like much more than I am.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I think pieces like that because over there like abstract art isn't obviously like on the scene and that's not what people care about over there because they can't and they don't have the time for it. But I think pieces like that like my mom could recognize and see and it like makes her feel a certain type of way. Like that's what matters. And people there will understand it and they'll appreciate that us that left are not just like throwing away everything and at least we're doing something and kind of like paying like homage to them in terms of like not having materials, not having like basic needs and basic anything.
Wow. Well then, with all this being said, where do you see your art going moving forward, or you as a person?
I think I'm trying, like, especially in this quarantine, I think we've all had like a lot of time to reflect on things like that we don't want to maybe. And so now I'm trying to bring my art into a more of like a focused idea. Because like my ideas are there, but I need them to narrow down a little bit just
Mm-hmm.
so that they could be more cohesive. And if I ever did want to do like a full show, I could because they would connect. And so I think that's what I'm trying to do now is like I have everything now. I need to like make everything small and digestible for people that don't understand anything that I'm saying and have never experienced anything and don't live nearly as close of a life that I do. Yeah, for them.
There you go. Just out of curiosity, when did you come to America?
Oh no, I was like I think I was like 2, but my family had already lived here because I was born like 7 years after my brother. They had already been here. I was the only one that stayed there for like a while, and then we went back. Like we were here for a little bit, then we went back. So they grew up there, but I was the only one that stayed there in like early childhood. And then we just kept going back and forth. And we still do. We go every single summer of my entire life for the full summer.
Hmm.
So we're extremely connected, and we have to get through 3 different countries to get there, but always worth it.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, nice. Any, I guess, parting thoughts about the? I mean, you said the quarantine is kind of like making us reflect on things that we maybe didn't want to think about before, especially with this. Um, Here's how I see it usually. Whenever you're kind of forced out of your routine, the even though it's like low key terrible and there are tons of systemic things we should be looking at to change once we go back to normal life, underlying all that, here's a chunk of time you didn't have before, right? Here's a chunk of time to spend with your thoughts. And I'm a Virgo, and like I already think too much. So any opportunity not even opportunity, it's not an opportunity. Anytime I'm forced to like spend with my own head is a little bit of hell. So I'm always like, let me distract myself. Let me do this. Let me go to work. Let me not come home till 9 p.m. because I'm in the studio, just so I don't have to think. Um, and I think it's really quite accurate what you said about we're in a position now where even if we don't want to, we're kind of making ourselves think um, about some of these things. There's a lot to be said about the kinds of like what a routine does for you and your productivity, right? Um, I think maybe we spoke a little bit about it when you were talking about class, but do you notice that now that you're I don't know what your life is like, but if you're holed up at home, does it change what your day to day does?
Oh yeah, for sure. Because I'll wake up and then my mom will ask me for something, and then my sister will ask me for something, and then it's just bouncing around trying to be the person that's like making everything stable and okay, and everybody's like fine. But then everybody's sleeping at like 6 a.m. and it's a mess. We're a lot of people because my sister's my neighbor, so it's kind of like two full houses that are just trying to not kill each other and keep our sanity. But yeah, like I think this is everybody's like inner tortured artist finally living its like dream of having too much time and too much thinking and trying to like slip into a depression and trying to slip into work instead.
Yeah,
Yeah,
try not to be
yeah,
distracted by our own I don't know our own like anxiety of everything that's happening.
yeah, for sure.
Well, cool. Well, thank you for joining me on a quick Monday afternoon chat, Mara.
Thank you for asking me. I love doing anything for the gallery. The gallery is like my favorite place in the entire world now.